So my healthcare journey, I guess, just happened a long, long time ago. I have been working in the industry for over 20 years, like you said, but I actually got started working in pharmacy. So I worked in pharmacy for about 5 years before I became a nurse. I'd wanted to be a nurse before then. I'd always wanted to be a nurse, but I had this great opportunity to go into pharmacy, and so I took it, and I just kept thinking about it, and I kept coming back to it, and so I really like climbed the ladder. Here in the States, we have a certification for nursing assistants. And so I got that and I started working as an assistant. And then I got my licensed nursing certification, which is kind of like a baby step into the nursing career. You can work as a nurse, but you have like a smaller scope of practice. And then I finally got my bachelor's degree and was able to sit for my registered nursing boards. And I did that in 2013 and then just kind of kept going from there. It was like this big snowball. I had so many great opportunities along the way to work in so many different areas of nursing and different areas of healthcare. I really got a good taste for what the system looks like big picture, which I don't think a lot of people have. I've found working in all of these areas, everybody is very a cog in the wheel sort of thing. They kind of know what they do, but they don't really know what it looks like big picture. And so that's what I love to bring to patients is a little bit of understanding of how everything fits together and where they are in the grand scheme of things.
Amazing. I love that. You've had a very diverse career in healthcare. What inspired your passion for supporting birthing women? Because I know that is one of your biggest passions. And
It
how did your
really
experience
is.
with labor and delivery deepen the passion for supporting birthing women?
Yeah, so the story that I love to tell is one that my mom actually tells to me, or has told to me, is that when I was 4 years old, I announced in a very authoritative way that I was going to catch babies. And she was just kind of taken aback and said, "Oh, do you want to work in the nursery and hold and take care of the babies?" And I said, "Nope. I'm going to catch them." And little did I know at the young age of 4 that that's actually the terminology that's used by most midwives is catching babies. A lot of people think about delivering babies, but that's more of like an obstetrical point of view. And we can talk about that a little bit more too if you'd like. But because there is such a difference in the way that we think about birth when you're talking about midwifery versus obstetrical care. But yeah, midwives catch babies. And I've worked with a number of midwives throughout my career. I love deeply and dearly. They're so close to my heart. And so, even from a young age, I was apparently very passionate about catching babies and supporting women through that process. Then I finally achieved my dream and got the opportunity to train and work in labor and delivery in a hospital setting. And that really deepened my passion for working with that particular population because in that setting in particular, I saw women disrespected and I saw women abused by all sorts of people. I saw women that were uneducated about their choices, but were highly educated in other areas of their life. And I saw women that lacked community and support. And that is really what deepened in my heart the need to support women, especially in this period of their life.
Yeah, so it's been embedded into you from such a young age. That's awesome.
Yeah, I was actually born at home as well. I grew up with stories of my own birth and my brother's births at home. And so to me, it was always a very natural process, a natural thing to do that didn't necessarily need a lot of medical intervention.
Yeah, that is so amazing. I absolutely love that. And it's really true. Like, we do need more support for women when they are birthing. They're not really, there's not much information, resources, guidance, support out there about their options. And it's all about in helping women make an informed decision, and having the basic
Right.
like information is so important, and it just really gives them the empowerment and the strength to have the birth that they truly desire. So yeah, that's awesome. Um, I'd love to know, like, in your work across various like clinical settings, what stood out to you about the unique needs of women during pregnancy, birth, and postpartum.
Absolutely. Working across the different settings, I'll just kind of put out there the juxtaposition between working in hospital birth and working in a birth center birth or assisting women at home who are laboring and birthing there. And so you get to really see what actually is needed or necessary and what truly is a medical intervention. What women truly, very truly need is education about what their choices are, education about what actual risk is. And there's like actual risk and there's relative risk, right? And that goes into like the whole statistics around birth and what different complications can lead to. I think a lot of people hear risk as like an absolute risk and it sounds really scary, but when you look at it in terms of relative risk, it's really not that big of a deal, if that makes sense. And if you want, we can go into that a little bit more. I know statistics is like, woo, way out there. I don't even like to deal with it that much. But going back to like what birthing women need is that they need that education on what truly their choices are, so that they can make an informed decision based on their own values and what they're comfortable with. And then also they need support. And truly, those are the two main pillars of what pregnant and birthing women need. It really all boils down to that. Through the actual birthing process that happens, dilation and delivery of the baby and the placenta, those all do take a skilled medical hand, but only to mitigate risk in its like relative form. And usually we're just watching, we're just standing by, we're just making sure that the natural process takes place as it should and that everybody's okay. All of the physiological births that I've seen have really gone very smoothly and have needed very little intervention. So I don't think there's a lot of actual need for anything in particular. Like, you don't need to have a bassinet, you don't need to have a tub, you don't need to have X, Y, and Z in my mind. But education and support are actually just paramount to what women need in this time of their life.
Yeah, it's like the backbone of everything when you're
Yeah,
going into that
absolutely.
birth, to that matrescence, and into that parenting journey. It's the backbone of everything. Having that village, having that connection, having that support, that you can really lean
Yeah.
on. I really wanted to come back to how you're talking about medical interventions and how a lot of
Sure.
them are not really necessary. What do you think are the biggest medical interventions that are not really necessary that you see quite often, if you don't mind sharing?
Yeah, I mean, let's start at the basics. IV fluid, not necessary. Women are fully capable of managing their intake during labor. And this is, I'll just say, like, if we're talking about normal women, like if you have some sort of underlying medical disease or process or condition going on, there may be, there, you may fall into the category of outliers. I'm talking about like normal women, normal births that don't have any underlying physiological disease. But yeah, IV fluids, women will know to keep themselves hydrated and fed, and they will tell you, my body's done. We're focusing on getting this baby out now. It's a natural, innate process that their body is going through, and they will intake what they need when they need it. Another one is that I so often see is continuous fetal monitoring. Actually, there's so much research that points to that causing more interventions and actually worse outcomes for mom and baby, because there's a lot of things going on for mom and baby during the birth. And so when we're keeping that constant eye, it just gives us the opportunity to find things that look funny. And I'm doing air quotes here for anybody who's just listening. So lots of things can look funny when you're looking at a fetal tracing. That doesn't necessarily indicate that anything is wrong. There's going to be anomalies, especially during the birthing process, that may get providers a little, what I think of as trigger happy, to like start the next intervention because they're thinking about risk mitigation. So I think those are big ones. Cervical exams are another one that are totally routine practice in a lot of places. But even done with a sterile surgical glove, you still run the risk of introducing microorganisms, introducing other things to that field that are may cause harm or may cause problems in the birth or in the direct postpartum period. And they're just not necessary. Honestly, like a skilled provider knows where that woman is in labor by the way that she's breathing, by the way that she's talking, by the way that she's moving. If you don't know by looking at her where she is in labor, you might not be able to be like, oh, she's at 6 centimeters, but you're like, we're like in the throes of it. We're doing well. We're going to be making progress here. Or you can be like, she's early stages. Everybody take a nap. We're going to have some food. Or you might be like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be there as fast as I can. I'm going to speed my car. Like, hope that I make it in time. All of those things you can tell by how she's breathing, how she's talking, how she's moving.
Yeah. Wow. Coming back to the IV fluids, how you think that is like a medical intervention that's like widely unnecessary. I remember like having my experience with my second boy, and I got to the hospital at 6 p.m. and he was like here by 9 p.m. So I was like in active labor when I got to the hospital, and
Yeah.
they were trying to stick me with an IV. I'm like, why are you
Yeah.
trying to do that? Like, just stop. Like, it's so unnecessary.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've experienced that myself. And I've also experienced the other things like fetal monitoring as well. So I definitely feel like they're definitely overused in the healthcare setting, 100%. I'd love to dive into like our next question, which is you
Sure.
specialize in utilization management. How do you ensure that women and families receive the best care during such a critical time, such as like pregnancy and birth? How do you make sure that they're getting the best care that they need throughout that time?
I love this question because it really speaks to kind of the things that are going on in the background. So, I research and advocate for policies and coverage that ensure women and families have access to education and have options available in their healthcare policies. Because I believe that the biggest disservice that we can do to our patients is to remove their freedom of choice or their free will. We have to consider the fact that in most, well, I'll speak for the US healthcare system because that's the one I know best, but I think this is kind of ubiquitous, is that providers are thinking in terms of risk mitigation and risk management. And that is exacerbated when people have choice. But it's really kind of interesting because when patients are well educated and there's good rapport between patients and their providers, it's actually a protective measure against lawsuits. So they're kind of working against themselves by taking away education and the showing free will as an illusion, when it's really actually not. They present it in a way that makes you feel like you don't really have a choice. But if they just kind of stepped back for a moment and actually educated their patients and developed a relationship with them, that's far more protective than telling people they only have one choice and they have to act this way when they get to the hospital. So yeah, I work a lot on educating decision makers in our system and educating providers on making sure that their patients have access to education. And that's actually what I've done with my public health degree, is making sure that people of low socioeconomic status and those that normally don't have access to resources have access to that education as well. And then also, again, making sure that we have choices within our healthcare system. So, like when I was giving birth to my second daughter, it was incredibly difficult to get a midwife covered under our insurance. They just didn't want to do it. And she was actually ended up being born in the hospital because we were fighting with them till the very end of my pregnancy on where I could deliver and what they would pay for. So I don't want anybody else to end up in that situation or find that getting the care that they want, like having a midwife, is cost prohibitive. So that's a lot of the work that I do on that end.
Yeah, that's beautiful and it's so important. Starting with the basics, like education and the access to education as well. I speak from like the Australian healthcare setting from personal and lived experience. I found that there is not much education and there's not much resources and support for women who are pregnant, going through birth, and also the postpartum period. And being on the healthcare side of it as well for 16 years, it was it was really, I guess, shocking to see that there wasn't as much support for women. And that is like what brings me to what I do, which is providing the education and the support for women,
Right.
yeah, you know, going through their parenting journey. It's really, really needed, and also like the access to it, making it more accessible for women, not just for women, but also like dads as well, because they're really important, or your significant other, your
Yeah.
partner, whatever that looks like in your family dynamic. Um, yeah, so it's really, I really do agree with you that education is so, so important, to be able to make informed decisions and advocate for what you want.
And I think, yeah, well, and what I have found, and it sounds like you have a similar experience in Australia too, is that there's this false belief or narrative out there that doctors and nurses and everybody there will help you once you get there. Like or during your pregnancy, when you go to your prenatal visits, they will be the ones educating you about what's happening to your body and your baby and what the choices are and how to make good decisions and what the birth is going to look like and what kind of support you're going to need during the birth and after the birth. And at least providers in the States, they are like, literally, that's not my job. Don't ask me about it. I don't know what to tell you. And actually, like if you do ask about it, you'll get like the party line, right? Where you're going to come in, you're going to get an IV, you're going to be strapped to the bed with a continuous monitor, and you're not going to be allowed to get up and walk around, and you're not going to be allowed to do this and that and this and that, right? And I found that so much, especially when I worked in the hospital, is everybody thought, well, my nurse is going to support me through labor. And that's just, they don't have time for that. They're managing other patients, they have other responsibilities. Their job is not to be your labor support or your doula as much as some of them probably want it to be, but it's just not part of their job description when it comes down to birthing in that setting. And so I think that misconception really does a lot to hurt women and families, because had they known, they could have sought out that education during pregnancy or during their planning their family, and could have sought out those resources prior to. But when you're in the throes of it, that's not really the time to be like, okay, this is what an epidural is and this is what it does. And when I do a cervical exam, this is what it's going to do and this is what it's going to tell me. Or like, these are your options. You can have this kind of pain relief, or you can have nothing, or you can have an epidural, or you can do this, or you can try these different positions, to alleviate pain. So I think there's just like a general disservice to women and families that are on, their family building journey, however that looks, that the mantle really is on themselves to get educated and to find out about what their choices are, because if you're not doing it, nobody else is going to handhold you through that. So I think that the work that you're doing is amazing, and it's just so, so needed.
Thank you. And I think like, totally agree with like healthcare settings. Like they're so understaffed. There is like no time, like, and there's also not enough,
Yeah.
I guess, money put into the resources that are available for parents as well. Like staffing shortages, like it's massive in Australia, particularly New South Wales at the moment, and nurses are fighting for being able to have ratios to be able to support families more. And I just don't think the government really sees the effects, and um, how it like compounds down the line, and how it affects not only nurses, but it affects patients, it affects families, it affects children. Like it's
Totally.
like a generational trauma that just keeps on continuing. Yeah, I guess it's crazy, it's mind blowing. But I guess this kind of ties into the next question that I wanted to ask you. What are the biggest
Sure.
challenges from your perspective that birthing women face today in terms of access to quality care and support? And how do you think that, as health practitioners, like you're being a registered nurse, myself being a nurse, how can we address those challenges?
I think one of the biggest challenges we kind of touched on already is the loss of autonomous decision making, or the perceived loss, I guess you could say, because nobody can actually take that away from you and it's technically protected. But lots of providers and facilities, they all have their policies and procedures, right, that actually are designed to take away choice. Is like I discussed before, it's all about risk mitigation and risk management, right? So these policies and procedures are developed with the facility or the provider in mind. So if they think that it's risky to only do intermittent fetal monitoring, they're going to write into their policy that we only do continuous monitoring. And that's going to be presented to the patient that way. Well, if you're birthing here, we only do this. When in actual fact, policies and procedures are not laws. They're not instituted by any legal power. They are the suggestion of your provider and your facility. That's their preference. That's what they're telling you. These are our preferences, is that you would have continuous fetal monitoring. But that's not how it's presented, right? So it's presented as you don't have a choice, when in actual fact, you always have a choice. They might balk and they might whine and they might throw their tantrums, because we've all known providers that do that, right? At least I have as a nurse. That's one of the reasons why I left the hospital. But as a patient, you can always say, no, thank you. I don't like that. I don't want that. And they might throw like lots of really scary words and statistics your way if you decide to go against their preferences. And that's okay. That's where being an empowered, informed consumer comes in, is if you go into that birth, that crazy, wild situation that you're suddenly thrown into. If you go in as a highly educated consumer, you can be like, I know that's what you prefer, but I know what I know about continuous fetal monitoring, and I'm really okay with us not doing that. I would prefer that you monitor for 20 minutes every 2 hours and do Doppler checks in between. And that's my preference. And you're totally allowed to say that. And at least in the States, I'm not sure how it is in Australia, but if you're in labor, it's considered an emergent situation and they can't refuse you care. So they have no choice but to treat you. And if you do not consent to continuous fetal monitoring, then they're not allowed to do that to your body. So I think that, to me, like I said, going back to the question, is that is the biggest challenge, is getting people to get over that mental hurdle of somebody is saying this, but I know this.
Yeah.
And so how do I stay autonomous and stay aligned with my values and what I know to be true, faced with this really challenging situation, which could be a provider or a facility that's saying, well, you have to do it this way. And there's no have to, but people really have to practice and get comfortable in their bodies saying, no, I'm really okay with not doing that. I mean, that's really, really hard. And I acknowledge that, because we have been taught to believe that physicians are an authority in our culture and in our society, and they do deserve a lot of respect. They have a lot of education and a lot of experience. However, if you are an educated and informed consumer, so do you. And you are the number one authority on your body.
I absolutely love that.
So that being said, I feel like I was on a little soapbox there. Sorry. um, So, what we don't want is to accept things that mitigate risk for the facility or our provider, but increase risk for ourselves. And so that's again why you have to be a really informed consumer to know exactly yes, I'm comfortable with this. No, I'm not comfortable with that. Because you're going to have to come against this implied lack of choice. And what that really is a lack of informed consent on the provider side. And that is their actual legal obligation. They have a legal obligation to provide informed consent to their patients. And if they're saying continuous fetal monitoring is our policy, then they are denying you informed consent.
100%.
So yeah, I mean, that to me is like the biggest thing, and the fix to that is getting people educated.
100%. That's what I was going to say as well, and that really ties back to education and getting that education and knowing your choices, knowing your options, and being 100% in your willpower and your strength and your empowerment as a woman to be like, no, I know my choices, I know my options, I know the risks, I know the benefits. This is my choice, and just sticking with that and being strong. And I think like it's important for us, like as healthcare professionals, and what we do is empowering women to know their options and to be educated as well. And I think that's what we're here to do. So perfectly said, honestly.
Thank you. I think too, it helps so much. You touched on it briefly before about getting dads or partners or support people involved as well. I cannot support that comment more because truly, a woman's job in labor is to birth her baby, is to birth that baby. And she needs somebody there to support her in the choices that she's made for that birth and for her body, and to be as well educated and informed as she is on what's going on in that situation. Because she's going to come to a point where she's no longer in her right mind, especially if she's unmedicated. And it will be harder and harder for her to have those conversations fluidly and with logical sense. So I cannot underestimate, or people cannot underestimate, the power of having an advocate, a supporter, a partner, somebody with you in during that process to not only be like, yeah, I second that. Like, we've already talked about that. We've looked at it. Here's what we know. This is what we've already decided. We're really firm in our decision. Or even somebody to just say, okay, this is new information. We need 5 minutes to talk about it. Like, you guys just need to leave and we can have a discussion about what we want to happen next based on the new information that you have all presented.
Yeah.
So I fully support that, as well as getting any support people, any partners, anybody that's going to be attending the birth to also be educated in everything as well.
It's like being your voice and your second set of eyes.
Yeah.
Sometimes when you're not capable of like speaking for yourself, that's when it's time for them to step up. And when you communicate with your support person before the birth, and you're prepared and you guys understand one another and you're on the same page, it makes things so more seamless and so much better. And it also, they're advocating for you at the end of the day. So I really think it's so important to really communicate with your support person, um, before you're going into that birth together. Yeah.
Absolutely.
The next question I wanted to ask was, what are some practices that you think are important to create more empowering, more supportive experience during the birth process for women?
Love that question. I think for me, if you are a birthing person, really getting in touch with your nervous system and your body. So many changes have been happening. It's a little hard to ignore, I know, and it seems kind of obvious to be like, get in touch with your body. But what I really mean by that is take some moments of stillness and silence. And you can call it meditation, you can call it rest, you can call it zoning out, just call it whatever feels right to you. But take a few moments of your day. Sometimes I just do it when I'm brushing my teeth, and just like check in with your body and be like, how's my jaw feeling? Have I been carrying stress in my jaw? Just check in with all your body parts and say, where am I holding my tension? How is my heart feeling? What's my emotional state? Where am I feeling constricted or contracted? Where am I feeling expansive? and open and loved. And really kind of doing a self-investigation on how your body is feeling and where you might need to dive in a little bit more on what you don't know or what you're afraid of, or what's coming next. Bringing a baby into the world is a lot of changes. So much is happening physically for you, but also emotionally and dynamically with your relationships and your household, whether you have other children, whether you have a partner at home, whatever your living situation is. So much is going to change with the arrival of this new baby, and you're going to be healing physically as well, along with all of the hormonal shifts that come along with that too, that are going to totally shift your mental and emotional state. So really keeping in touch with your body, your state of mind, your emotions. I love keeping a journal, and not even in the traditional sense of like, this is how my day went. But I keep it on my desk, and when I start to get anxious or stressed about something, I literally just jot it down and say, I'm feeling really stressed about how much stuff is on my calendar, or that my kids' practices are like 1,500 times a day and I'm driving around everywhere. It's a cathartic way of moving it through your body and through your nervous system onto something that feels solid and stable. So if it's not journaling, maybe you have like a 5-minute dance party where you just move your body and you move those feelings through your body. I'm also a really big fan of EFT, emotional freedom tapping. I like to do that a lot. So you tap on different meridian points on your body as you could do releasing statements, like you're releasing your fear, you're releasing your anxiety, you're releasing whatever it is. Or you can do positive affirmations where you're saying, I'm powerful, I am capable, my body was designed to do this. You could really just tell yourself anything. I actually saw this really amazing study, and I'm going to totally mess this up because I have no idea who did it or when it was done. I can't give you details on it, but I can send the link to you if you want. About these scientists spoke to water, just a bowl of water. And they told it, you're so beautiful. You're incredible. You are just amazing and beautiful. And I love you. And then they froze the water. And the fractals that the frozen water made when they spoke positively to it are gorgeous. They're absolutely amazing images. And then they did the same thing with the negative speak to the water bowls and told that they were ugly, they didn't do anything, they're just bad at their job, and they froze it. And the fractals of water that came out were so scary looking. It was just so amazing. But to me, it reaffirmed the power of our voice and of our words and what we tell ourselves every day. And really, it's like speaking magic into the world. You just tell yourself that you are capable, that your body was designed to do this, that you are a powerful human being, and you are intelligent and wonderful, and you've got this. And it will literally change your body, change your mind, and change your life. It's a definite form of magic. So be careful of your words.
I definitely agree.
Use them wisely, so to speak.
It can change, like, rewire your brain pathways, thinking something so negative to thinking something so positive. It can make the world of difference, and it's actually something that I incorporate in my daily routine as well. I have a morning routine, and I do meditation. And my little boy, actually, he sneaks into my room in the morning sometimes, early mornings. And one time he seen me doing meditation, and then a few days later, he's like, "Mummy, I want to do meditation." And I was like, "Oh, it melted my heart so much." And every morning now he says it. He's like, "Mummy, we do meditation this morning." So even incorporating your children, like, into that as well, and it sets them up for ways to be able to regulate their emotions down the track. And yeah, it's just
Absolutely.
little simple things sometimes.
Yeah, I read something recently too about families that had regular dance parties had actually fewer behavioral issues with their kids. Their emotions were more regulated and everybody just seemed more happy. So I'm a huge fan of like have a stack and a dance party and see if that fixes things.
Oh, I love a dance party. We love a dance party in our household. Is there
Nice.
anything else that you would like to share or anything that you feel like we've missed that you would like to touch on?
No, we covered so many great topics. Just I would love to encourage people to get educated. It's really about knowing what your choices are, and you are so capable of taking charge of your health, your birth, your body. Just know what your options are and know that you're in the driver's seat. You have the right of refusal. You can always ask questions or always ask for more time if you need it.
Beautifully said. And how can people best connect with you, Lael?
I'm actually my website's going to be under construction for the next few days. But if you want to just reach out to me on Instagram, I am the nightingale.rn on Instagram, and that's really the best way to reach out to me.
Beautiful. This was such an awesome chat, and I hope everyone gets a lot of knowledge and value out of this. And if you liked today's podcast, please don't forget to subscribe and also share it along as well. But that is it for now. Thank you so much for coming and being a guest on my podcast today. I really, really
Thank you
appreciate
so
it.
much for having me.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
I'll just stop the recording.